Information discussed in this podcast may be sensitive in nature to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Misty Dawn Faulkner left work on January 14th, 2011 for the last time. Only she didn't know it yet. She called her grandmother before she left work, a call that would be her last with her grandmother. Again, Misty just didn't know it yet. She would also stop at Walmart on her way home to pick up some groceries for the last time ever. And you guessed it, Misty had no idea that would be her last stop ever at that Oklahoma Walmart. Misty spent her days working at Tyson Foods and spent her evenings and weekends with her two young boys. Misty had recently left her husband and moved in with her grandparents. That relationship with her husband had been tumultuous, to say the least, and Misty's friends and family were hopeful that she could get her life back on track and get up on her own 2 feet. Misty was taking steps to do just that. But the events of January 14th, 2011 have left everyone baffled. Something happened to Misty that evening. Something. But what? And whatever that was that had happened suddenly, without warning. And something that has left everyone with many questions for all these years. The main question that everyone is still asking, however, is where is Misty Dawn Faulkner? Hello, and welcome back to the Where Are They podcast and another unsolved missing persons case. This story came recommended to me by a listener. Thank you so much to Anastasia for sending me Misty's case. I do want to continue to research this one. Misty's story doesn't have too much out there. But I do hopefully want to do a longer follow-up episode down the road. But since we are working with very limited case information right now, I want to take a look at what we do know. As I said, Misty's case offers up very few details. We also really don't know much about who Misty is or was as a person. In 2014, Misty had 2 young sons and had recently left her husband, Francis. Francis was a minister. But despite his religious beliefs, many people said that he did not treat Misty well. In fact, they would tell you he treated her horribly. Those who knew the couple best said that Francis was often abusive, physically and mentally. At one point, they claimed that he had even locked her up in an RV for some length of time. Now, Misty would finally leave her husband and move in with her grandparents in Uchi, Oklahoma. She was working at Tyson Foods in Southwest City, Missouri, which was about a half an hour's drive from Uchi. On Friday, January 14th, 2011, Misty left work that morning as she did most any other day. She made the drive to Southwest City, and the day progressed as most workdays had before. As her day at work was winding up, Misty called her grandmother. Misty said she would be stopping at Walmart on the way home for some groceries. Their call was brief, and they hung up, both saying that they would see each other soon. Misty did indeed stop at Walmart on her way home. She stopped at the Walmart in Oklahoma, which is the closest one to Uchi. Misty purchased her groceries and then made the 5 to 6 mile drive back to her home. She pulled up to her grandparents' house, also her home since she'd now been living there, and turned off the car engine. Thinking that he had heard a car, her grandfather pulled back the drapes and saw Misty in the driveway. He also saw that she was on the phone. This was typical for Misty, so he went back to what he was doing. Now, time ticked by, but her grandparents were busy doing their own thing, not realizing, at least at first, how much time had gone by since Misty had pulled in. Misty was 29 years old, and if she wanted to sit in her car and talk on the phone, she certainly could. And apparently this was something she had done before. But after an hour, or maybe even a little more, went by, her grandparents made a comment to each other that Misty sure was taking a long time, and maybe they should at least go grab the groceries and get them put away. They peeked out the window again just to see what Misty was doing, and noticed that she was no longer in the car. Her grandfather went outside, believing that she was just out there somewhere, maybe walking around, pacing around, maybe she was still on the phone. But he was surprised to not see her anywhere. He was even more surprised when he tried to open her car door and found that it was locked. The only logical explanation was that Misty had locked up her car and left, either on foot or perhaps by getting in someone else's car. Maybe someone had picked her up. But why had she not at least brought the groceries into the house? Now, as I said before, the details are a little scarce on this case, and it's unclear if her grandparents were able to get in the car that day to retrieve those groceries at that time. It's also unclear where her two boys were during this time frame. What we do know is that they would try to reach Misty through her friends and neighbors, they'd call her cell phone, with no luck. They would wait 3 days for her to come home before calling to report her missing on January 17th, 2011. Misty had been going through a rough time. She was possibly going through a divorce, estranged from her husband. It had been a bad relationship. She has young children. But she was very close to her family and her extended family, and she was an extremely doting mother to her boys. Her family did not believe for 1 second that she would have left of her own accord. Authorities came out and searched Misty's car and found a couple of other disturbing clues. First, her cell phone was found inside the car. Wherever Misty had gone, she had not taken her cell phone with her. Then they found Misty's wallet. If for some reason she had left on her own, she would have taken her wallet, especially since it contained $150 in cash. That also seemed to maybe rule out a robbery, although that would have been pretty brazen to rob Misty in her own driveway with her grandparents right inside. None of this was making any sense. Her grandparents hadn't heard another car pull up, but they hadn't really been watching either or paying close attention. Why would they be? If someone did pull up, did Misty get into their car? And why would she leave behind her cell phone and wallet? Maybe she hopped in the car just to have a chat with them. If someone had possibly kidnapped her, why didn't anyone hear her scream? Or why didn't they find any signs of a struggle? And who had taken the time to lock up the car? 1 minute, Misty was sitting in her car, chatting away on the cell phone, groceries in the back seat, and the next, she was gone. I can't tell you exactly who she was talking to in those moments when her grandfather saw her, but I can tell you that the police identified 2 persons of interest pretty quickly. Misty's estranged husband, Francis, and a past boyfriend. It's likely that they do have the cell phone information, but haven't released it publicly. We can also understand why the husband would be a person of interest. I mean, first of all, husbands generally are a person of interest in a case like this, but we really don't know much about the boyfriend. Authorities did give both men a polygraph test, to which both passed. Now, these tests are unreliable, which is why they are inadmissible in court. But it is interesting, nonetheless, that they both passed the lie detector test. They did discover a text message from Francis to Misty that they interpreted as threatening, and a friend told them that he had also left Misty threatening voicemails in the past. Yet another friend would come forward and say that she witnessed Francis telling Misty that, quote, "If I can't have you, no one can," end quote. This information does not paint a good picture of Francis in this situation. What I also found interesting is not only was Francis a minister, but he also worked for the Delaware County Sheriff's Department as a jailer, the same department that was investigating his estranged wife's disappearance. And if it was someone that Misty knew who pulled up to her home that evening, it would certainly explain why she might have hopped in their vehicle or went willingly and quietly to go talk to someone. She probably expected to be right back or thought they would just sit in the car and chat. The surrounding area where the home that Misty and her grandparents lived has a lot of woods and even a pond nearby. Searches began in and around that whole area. However, nothing led them to Misty. They didn't find any trace of her anywhere. Leads came in regularly, and each one was investigated thoroughly, but there were still no signs of Misty. Soon, weeks turned to months and months turned to years, and Misty remained missing. Her sons were growing up without their mother, and Misty's family continued to hope for the best and pray for answers. In 2022, a new cold case unit was created in Delaware County with a focus on several cold cases in that area. One of those cases was Misty Faulkner's. Those wooded areas were once again searched, and specialized search teams were brought in, this time with ground-penetrating radar equipment, and a few anomalies were detected. Those areas were excavated, but nothing provided any clues to Misty's whereabouts. Interestingly, 8 different cadaver dogs were used in that area at different times, and each one of them would hit on an area at the edge of the pond. This pond would be drained and thoroughly searched, but yet again, no sign of Misty. Delaware County, Oklahoma is located in the northeast corner of the state. About a 30-minute drive to Missouri, and an hour drives north takes you to Kansas. It's pretty rural, with lots of forest lands in the surrounding area. In Uchee, you'll also find the popular recreation lake of Lake Uchee. Just south, you'll come into the indigenous tribal land belonging to the Cherokee Nation. There are plenty of places for a person to hide, willingly or unwillingly. So what do you think happened to Misty Dawn Faulkner? Do you believe she was likely kidnapped, or perhaps the stress of her life caused her to want to run away? Could she have wanted to get away and start new somewhere else? Misty is described as a Caucasian female standing 5'2" tall and weighing around 150 pounds when she was last seen in January of 2011. She was 29 years old. Misty had shorter brown hair at the time, and she has hazel eyes. Misty was wearing a black Stephen Barry's hooded sweatshirt, a black sweater, blue jeans, and a size 8 or 8.5 brown boots. Misty has a few tattoos. She has a dolphin on her right lower leg, a dragon's head surrounded by blue sky on her lower back, and the names JC, Andrew, and Sunny on her left upper arm. Anyone with any information on Misty Dawn Faulkner is asked to contact the Delaware County Sheriff's Office at 918-253-2700. Thank you so much for listening to Misty's story today. While there seems to be at least one, maybe 2 persons of interest, authorities are just lacking that one piece of the puzzle to bring Misty home, to solve this case. Hopefully, if we keep sharing Misty's story, someone out there may discover they have that missing piece. A huge thank you again to Anastasia for recommending Misty's story to me. As a reminder, you can send me case suggestions over on social media, on our website at the case suggestion page, or via email at canwefindthem@gmail.com. Thank you again for tuning in today to Misty Faulkner's story. Let's help bring this mom home to her boys, one way or another. We will be back again very soon with another unsolved missing persons case. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.